Mia's blood froze as the billionaire's pupils dilated across the white tablecloth, the exact symptoms her murdered mother had documented 20 years ago. In saving Alexander Ryker's life with a single urgent warning, she had unknowingly triggered a deadly conspiracy that would reveal why her DNA matched the most powerful man in pharmaceuticals. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the videos, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. A single moment can change the trajectory of countless lives. For Mia Winters, a 28-year-old waitress at Billionaire, Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant, that moment came in the form of a silent observation. For Alexander Ryker, a man whose net worth exceeded the GDP of small nations, it arrived as a sudden betrayal of his own body. She was just trying to survive another shift. He was just another titan of industry enjoying an overpriced meal. But when his pupils began to dilate, a distant memory became an urgent reality that would threaten to unravel decades of carefully constructed barriers. This isn't about chance. This is the story of how a waitress's medical knowledge saved a billionaire's life and unearthed a shared history that would shake the foundations of a pharmaceutical empire. The ambient lighting of Lumiere cast a golden glow across the polished mahogany and crisp white tablecloths. A symphony of quiet conversations and the delicate clink of fine china filled the air. Mia moved between tables with practiced grace, her black uniform immaculate, her smile professional yet distant. 6 years at Lumiere had taught her the art of invisibility, to serve without being seen, to anticipate without being noticed. At 8:45 on a Thursday evening, the restaurant hummed with its usual crowd of power brokers, celebrities, and old money. Mia's section included 3 tables, a foreign diplomat and his wife, a famous author celebrating her latest bestseller, and a solitary man whose very presence seemed to alter the atmosphere of the room. Alexander Ryker didn't need to announce his importance. His bespoke suit, tailored to perfection, spoke of wealth beyond ostentation. His silver-streaked dark hair framed features that had graced the covers of business magazines for decades. At 56, he carried himself with the unshakable confidence of a man who had never heard the word no. Mia approached his table with a bottle of Chateau Lafite Rothschild, 1982. "Your wine, Mr. Ryker," she said, her voice measured and professional. She knew his name, as did everyone in the service industry. Ryker Holdings controlled pharmaceutical patents worth billions, medical research facilities across 3 continents, and a charitable foundation that made headlines with its 8-figure donations. He barely glanced up from his phone as she poured, offering only the slightest nod of acknowledgement. Mia wasn't offended. Invisibility was her armor in this world of excessive privilege. As she stepped back from the table, she noticed something odd. Ryker's hand trembled slightly as he reached for his glass, a barely perceptible shake, but in a man known for his precise control. It registered as a warning bell in Mia's mind. "Is everything to your satisfaction, sir?" she asked, studying his face with newfound attention. This time he looked up, and Mia felt a jolt of recognition. Not because she knew him personally, their worlds couldn't have been further apart, but because she recognized the symptoms unfolding before her. His pupils were dilated despite the restaurant's dim lighting. A slight sheen of sweat had formed on his forehead despite the carefully controlled temperature. The tremor in his hand wasn't an isolated incident. A subtle twitching had begun at the corner of his left eye. "Fine," he said curtly, but his voice carried a slight slur that hadn't been present earlier. Mia hesitated, professional boundaries warring with medical instinct. "Sir, are you feeling all right?" Irritation flashed across Ryker's face. "I said, I'm fine." She should have walked away. It wasn't her place to question a man like Alexander Ryker. But 6 years ago, before life had forced her from medical school into full-time waitressing, she had written a research paper on rare neurological reactions. The constellation of symptoms she was witnessing now had been at the center of that paper. "Mr. Ryker," she said, her voice dropping to ensure privacy, "I don't mean to intrude, but have you recently started taking Zelvatrax?" The question landed like a physical blow. Ryker's eyes widened in shock, then narrowed with suspicion. How could you possibly? He never finished the sentence. In the next moment, his body went rigid, the wine glass slipping from his fingers and shattering against the table's edge. Then he collapsed, his body sliding from the chair onto the polished hardwood floor. The restaurant erupted in gasps and exclamations. The maitre d' rushed forward, already pulling out his phone to call for help. But Maya was faster, dropping to her knees beside the fallen billionaire. He's having an acute reaction to Zelvatrax, she announced with calm authority, all pretense of the deferential waitress gone. It's causing serotonin syndrome. We need epinephrine and a benzodiazepine immediately. She loosened his tie and turned him onto his side as his body began to convulse. Does anyone have an EpiPen? She called out to the stunned crowd of diners. A woman at a nearby table rushed forward, designer purse in hand. I'm allergic to shellfish, she explained, retrieving the auto-injector. Mia took it with a grateful nod. Sir, she said to Ryker, though she wasn't sure he could hear her through the seizure, I'm going to help you, but this will hurt. With practiced precision, she administered the epinephrine, then monitored his pulse. The convulsions began to subside, but his breathing remained labored. How do you know what's happening to him? The maitre d' asked, his face pale with shock. I was in medical school, Mia replied, her focus unwavering from her patient. I studied this exact reaction. Zelvatrax is a new antidepressant from Ryker's own company. 1 in 50,000 people carries a genetic marker that causes this reaction. It's rare enough that it didn't show up in clinical trials, but common enough that it's a known risk now. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Alexander Ryker's eyes fluttered open, confusion giving way to recognition as he focused on Mia's face. You, he whispered, his voice barely audible. How did you know? Before she could answer, paramedics burst through the restaurant doors. Mia stood, suddenly aware of the scene she had created, kneeling on a restaurant floor in her waitress uniform. The most powerful man in the pharmaceutical industry sprawled before her. Serotonin syndrome induced by Zelvatrax, she told the first paramedic to reach them. I administered epinephrine approximately 2 minutes ago. He'll need diazepam to fully counter the reaction. The paramedic gave her a startled look, but immediately followed her assessment, calling orders to his team. As they transferred Ryker to a stretcher, his hand shot out, gripping Mia's wrist with surprising strength. Your name? He demanded, his voice stronger now. Mia Winters. Something flickered in his eyes, not just gratitude, but recognition. I'm Winters, he repeated, as though testing the sound. Are you related to Catherine Winters? The question hit Mia like a physical blow. No one had mentioned her mother's name to her in years. She was my mother, she answered, the admission automatic despite her shock. Ryker's grip tightened. Come to Mount Sinai. Room will be in my name. His words were becoming slurred again as the medical team pushed a sedative into his IV. We need to talk. As the paramedics wheeled him away, Mia stood frozen, the restaurant's chaos fading to background noise. How did Alexander Ryker know her mother's name? Catherine Winters had been dead for 20 years, a brilliant neurologist whose career had ended in scandal and tragedy. The maitre d' approached, breaking her trance. Mia? What just happened? She looked down at her hands, still steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. I'm not entirely sure, she admitted, but I think I just saved Alexander Ryker's life. What she didn't say was that Alexander Ryker's company had manufactured the experimental drug that had been implicated in her mother's death. That Ryker Holdings had been the corporate giant that had destroyed Catherine Winters' research, reputation, and ultimately her will to live. 20 years of carefully constructed barriers between past and present had just collapsed as completely as the billionaire on the restaurant floor, and now, somehow, he wanted to talk about her mother. Mia glanced around at the chaos she'd left in her wake, the overturned chair, the shattered crystal, the shocked faces of Manhattan's elite. She had just saved the life of the man whose company had destroyed her family. The irony wasn't lost on her, nor was the opportunity this bizarre twist of fate presented. After 20 years of questions without answers, Alexander Ryker had just offered her a direct line to the truth. Whatever connected them, whatever had prompted that flash of recognition in his eyes, was about to come to light. The manager appeared at her side, his expression a mix of awe and concern. "Take the rest of the night off," he said, pressing her coat into her hands. "Whatever just happened, I think you have somewhere more important to be." Mia nodded, her decision already made. The hospital was waiting. Alexander Ryker was waiting. And perhaps, finally, the truth about her mother was waiting too. The hospital corridor stretched before Mia like a sterile gauntlet. Mount Sinai's VIP wing bore little resemblance to the hospital she remembered from her mother's final days. No peeling linoleum or flickering fluorescence here. The floors gleamed with Italian marble, the walls showcased original artwork, and the air carried the subtle scent of eucalyptus rather than antiseptic. She had changed out of her waitress uniform into jeans and a sweater, suddenly conscious of how out of place she would look among the specialists and executives who undoubtedly surrounded a man like Alexander Ryker. Her fingers closed around the laminated ID badge in her pocket. Catherine Winters, MD, PhD, Neurological Research Division, her mother's hospital badge, the one possession Mia had never been able to part with. At the nurse's station, a woman in a tailored suit rather than scrubs intercepted her. "May I help you?" The question carried the distinct edge of someone accustomed to turning people away. "I'm here to see Alexander Ryker. He asked for me." Mia's voice was steadier than she felt. "My name is Mia Winters." The woman's expression transformed instantly. "Ms. Winters, yes. We've been expecting you." She gestured to a security guard who materialized at Mia's elbow. "Please follow me." They bypassed the regular patient rooms, continuing to a private wing where two men in dark suits flanked a set of double doors. They nodded to Mia's escort and stepped aside. "Mr. Ryker is inside," the woman said. "The doctors have stabilized his condition, but he's under observation for the next 24 hours. She hesitated, then added, "He's been quite insistent about speaking with you." Mia nodded, steeling herself as the doors opened. The private suite beyond resembled a luxury hotel room more than a hospital space. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the twinkling Manhattan skyline, and medical equipment had been discreetly integrated into the wood-paneled walls. Alexander Ryker sat propped against pillows in a hospital bed that had clearly been designed to minimize the indignity of illness. An IV line was the only visible evidence of his medical crisis. His complexion had regained its color, and his eyes, sharp and calculating, fixed on Mia the moment she entered. "And Catherine's daughter," he said, his voice stronger than it had been in the restaurant. It wasn't a question. Mia approached the bed, maintaining a careful distance. "How did you know my mother?" Ryker studied her face with uncomfortable intensity. "You look like her. The resemblance is remarkable." He gestured to a chair beside the bed. "Please, sit." Mia remained standing. "You didn't answer my question." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Direct, like her, too," he sighed, seeming to deflate slightly against the pillows. "I knew Catherine Winters very well. We worked together for 3 years at Ryker Neurological Institute before." He trailed off, his expression clouding. "Before she killed herself after your company destroyed her research and reputation," Mia finished for him, the words sharp with 2 decades of accumulated bitterness. Ryker's face tightened. "Is that what you believe happened?" "It's what the newspapers reported. It's what the court records show. It's what drove my mother to swallow a bottle of pills while I was at school." Mia hadn't meant to reveal so much, but the words escaped like prisoners breaking free. "Then it's time you learned the truth." Ryker reached for a glass of water on the bedside table, his hand still showing a slight tremor. "Your mother didn't kill herself, Mia. She was murdered." The statement landed like a physical blow. Mia gripped the back of the chair to steady herself. "What are you talking about?" 20 years ago, Catherine Winters discovered something that threatened powerful people. The scandal, the discredited research, the accusations of falsified data. It was all fabricated to silence her. Ryker's voice had dropped to a near whisper. "I helped them do it. It's the greatest regret of my life." Mia sank into the chair, her legs no longer able to support her. "Why should I believe anything you say?" "Because you saved my life tonight using knowledge your mother discovered." He leaned forward, his eyes intense. "That paper you wrote in medical school about neurological reactions to serotonergic compounds, it was based on your mother's research, wasn't it? Mia felt the blood drain from her face. How could you possibly know about that? Because I've been following your career since you entered the University of Pennsylvania, the same university where Catherine did her residency. He settled back against the pillows. I've been waiting for you to finish what your mother started. I dropped out of medical school 3 years ago, Mia said flatly. Or my career consists of memorizing wine pairing and smiling at people who don't see me. Yet you recognized a 1 in 50,000 adverse reaction in seconds. You knew exactly what was happening to me before I did, and I own the company that makes the drug. Ryker's expression was both admiring and calculating. That's not the knowledge of a waitress. That's the intuition of a born neurologist. Catherine's daughter indeed. Mia's thoughts raced, trying to process the implications of his words. If what you're saying is true, if my mother was murdered, who did it? And why have you waited 20 years to tell me? The who is complicated. As for why now, he gestured to the IV in his arm. I'm dying, Mia. Not from tonight's episode that you prevented quite expertly, but from something far more insidious. I have a rare form of frontotemporal dementia. The irony isn't lost on me that it's attacking the same brain functions your mother spent her life studying. He reached for a small remote on the bedside table and pressed a button. A panel in the wall slid open, revealing a wall safe. The code is 110783. Mia froze. November 7th, 1983, her birth date. Open it, Ryker urged. With trembling fingers, Mia approached the safe and entered the numbers. The lock disengaged with a soft click. Inside was a single item, a worn leather journal with the initials KW embossed on the cover. My mother's research journal, she whispered, recognizing it instantly. It had disappeared along with all of Catherine's papers after her death. I took it the night she died, Ryker admitted, to protect it, and you, inside that journal, is evidence of what Catherine discovered. Evidence that could bring down Ryker Holdings and half a dozen other pharmaceutical companies. Evidence that got her killed. Mia clutched the journal to her chest, her heart pounding. Why give this to me now? Because tonight at the restaurant, you proved what I've suspected for years, that you inherited not just your mother's face, but her brilliance. His expression hardened. And because the same people who silenced Catherine are still out there, my diagnosis has made me vulnerable. Tonight's episode wasn't an accident, Mia. Someone switched my medication, someone with access to my private medical records and my personal prescriptions. You think someone tried to kill you, Mia said, the reality of the situation dawning on her, using your own drug against you. I know they did, just as they used Catherine's research against her 20 years ago. Ryker's eyes met hers with chilling intensity. You recognize the symptoms because you've studied the same neurological pathways your mother was investigating, pathways that can be weaponized. A knock at the door interrupted them. Ryker quickly motioned for Mia to hide the journal. A tall man in an expensive suit entered without waiting for a response. His silver hair and patrician features suggested old money and older power. Alexander, he said, his voice smooth as polished granite. The board is concerned. This incident is going to require some finesse with the FDA. Lawrence, Ryker acknowledged coolly, and I wasn't expecting you until morning. Lawrence Pierce, Ryker Holdings' chief operations officer and Ryker's second in command, turned his attention to Mia, his eyes narrowing slightly. And who might this be? This is the waitress who recognized my symptoms, Ryker replied, his tone deliberately casual. Ms. Winters has some medical training. I wanted to thank her personally. Pierce's gaze lingered on Mia's face with uncomfortable intensity. Something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, then calculation. How fortunate that she was there. His smile didn't reach his eyes. The company owes you a debt of gratitude, Miss Winters. Just doing what anyone would do, Mia replied, fighting to keep her voice steady. She could feel the weight of her mother's journal pressed against her side. Nevertheless, we should express our appreciation. Pierce reached into his jacket and withdrew a business card. Call my office tomorrow. We'd like to offer you a more suitable position than waiting tables. Someone with your observational skills could be an asset to Ryker Holdings. Mia accepted the card mechanically, her mind racing. The journal in her possession suddenly felt dangerous, radioactive. "Now, if you'll excuse us," Pierce continued smoothly, "Alexander and I have some company matters to discuss." It was a dismissal, but as Mia moved toward the door, Ryker called after her, "Ms. Winters, thank you again for everything." Their eyes met in a moment of silent communication. "Be careful," his gaze warned. "Trust no one." As the door closed behind her, Mia heard Pierce's voice, suddenly sharp with suspicion. "She looks remarkably like Catherine Winters, doesn't she, Alexander?" Almost as if the door sealed shut, cutting off his words. But the implication hung in the air like a gathering storm. Pierce had recognized her, and that recognition carried danger. Clutching her mother's journal, Mia walked swiftly down the hospital corridor, her heart hammering against her rib. 20 years of believing her mother had abandoned her through suicide, and now this murder, conspiracy, and a leather-bound journal that apparently held truths worth killing for. Whatever game Ryker was playing, she was now a piece on the board, and Lawrence Pierce had just made his first move. Mia's studio apartment in Astoria was a far cry from the opulence of Mount Sinai's VIP wing. The small space was meticulously organized, a habit ingrained during her medical training, but nothing could disguise its fundamental inadequacy. Textbooks from her abandoned education lined the walls, silent monuments to a dream deferred. She sat cross-legged on her bed, her mother's journal open before her. For 20 minutes, she had simply stared at it, afraid to breach this physical connection to a woman who had become more myth than memory over the years. The leather cover was worn smooth at the edges, bearing the invisible imprint of her mother's hands. Inside, Catherine Winters' precise handwriting filled page after page, the familiar slant of her G's and Y's unchanged from the birthday cards and notes Mia had preserved. With trembling fingers, she finally began to read. The early entries were straightforward research notes, observations on neurotransmitter pathways, clinical trial data, patient responses to experimental compounds. Catherine's brilliance shone through in the elegant connections she drew between seemingly unrelated neurological responses. Mia found herself nodding along, understanding her mother's thought process in a way that felt almost like conversation. Then, about halfway through, the tone of the entries changed. June 12th, 2003. Something's wrong with the P173 trials. Patient response rates don't match the lab data. When I raised concerns with Lawrence, he suggested I was overthinking the discrepancies. Alexander backed him, but I caught something in his expression. He's worried too. June 28th, 2003. Discovered anomalies in the sample processing. Certain specimens are being diverted before standard analysis. When I questioned the lab director, he claimed it was protocol from above. Above him is only Lawrence and the board. July 15th, 2003. Alexander finally admitted there's a secondary research track on P173. Military applications. They're weaponizing my work. God help me. Mia's breath caught. P173. She recognized the compound designation. It had evolved into Neuroxal, one of Ryker Holdings' most profitable drugs, a treatment for PTSD and anxiety disorders. Millions of prescriptions written annually. But what had her mother meant by weaponizing? The entries grew increasingly urgent and cryptic. August 3rd, 2003, confirmed my suspicions. P173 creates a unique vulnerability in the amygdala hypothalamus pathway. At specific dosages with the right triggering compound, it produces a catastrophic neural cascade. They're developing a binary weapon under the guise of therapeutic research, a seemingly benign medication that becomes lethal when activated by a secondary compound, untraceable, the perfect assassination tool. August 17th, 2003, confronted Alexander. He claims ignorance of the full application but admits the military contract. Says Lawrence handles that division. I've copied the original research data, going to the FDA next week. August 22nd, 2003. Someone's been in my house. Nothing obvious taken, but things moved. Being followed. Alexander warns me to drop it. Says I don't understand who we're dealing with. Says it's bigger than Ryker Holdings. Mentioned something called Helix Directive. Need to secure evidence off-site. The final entry was dated September 3rd, 2003. The day before, Catherine Winters was found dead in her bathroom from an apparent overdose of sleeping pill. A came by tonight. Says L. Knows everything, says I need to disappear, promised to protect Mia if anything happens. Don't trust him fully, but no choice now. Evidence hidden where only Mia will know to look. The music box, she'll remember. Mia's heart hammered against her ribs. The music box, her mother's antique music box that played Debussy's Clair de Lune, the same melody Catherine had hummed while tucking Mia into bed each night. After her mother's death, Aunt Judith had kept it, along with most of Catherine's possessions. Mia hadn't seen it in years. She reached for her phone, then hesitated. If Ryker was right, if people were willing to kill over this information, then every move she made could be monitored. Her waitress salary didn't allow for burner phones and counter-surveillance measures. A knock at her door made her nearly jump out of her skin. She quickly slid the journal under her mattress and approached the door cautiously. Through the peephole, she saw her neighbor, Mrs. Abernathy, an elderly widow who occasionally brought over surplus baked goods. Mia released her breath and opened the door. Mrs. Abernathy, hi, the old woman smiled, holding out a foil-wrapped plate. Lemon squares, dear. Made too many for my bridge club. Her eyes narrowed with concern. You look pale, Mia. Everything all right? Just a long shift, Mia replied, accepting the plate. Thank you for these. Mrs. Abernathy nodded, but then leaned in slightly. There was a man asking about you earlier. Very official looking. Said he was from your insurance company. Needed to verify your address. Mia's blood went cold. What did you tell him? Nothing, dear. I don't trust men in suits asking questions after dark. Mrs. Abernathy's expression hardened. My Harold was a police detective for 40 years. Taught me to recognize trouble when it comes knocking. Thank you, Mia said, genuine gratitude washing through her. Did you happen to see where he went? Black car at the curb. Still there last I checked. The old woman's eyes sparked with mischief. My back door leads to the alley. Harold's old service revolver is in my cookie jar if you need it. Mia almost laughed despite her fear. I'll keep that in mind. After Mrs. Abernathy left, Mia moved quickly. She couldn't stay here. She grabbed a backpack and stuffed in essentials, clothes, toiletries, her mother's journal, and the few mementos of Catherine she still possessed. If the music box was what she needed to find, she'd have to contact Aunt Judith, who lived upstate in Rochester. She scribbled a quick note and slipped it under Mrs. Abernathy's door. Need to go away for a few days. Could you water my plants? We'll explain later. Thank you for the warning. Ma! The back alley was mercifully empty. Mia hugged the shadows as she made her way to the subway station, constantly checking over her shoulder. The reality of her situation was sinking in. She was now running from the same people who had likely murdered her mother. People with resources, connections, and a 2-decade investment in keeping certain secrets buried. On the train to Penn Station, she used her phone to book a ticket to Rochester. If someone was tracking her phone, they'd follow that digital trail. But she wouldn't be on that train. Instead, she'd take the bus to New Haven, then figure out her next move. First, she needed to call Aunt Judith from a payphone, if she could even find one in 2025. As the subway rocked beneath Manhattan, Mia's mind raced through everything she had learned. P-173, now marketed as Neuroxal, a medication being used by millions, including veterans and trauma survivors. Her mother had discovered it could be weaponized when combined with a triggering compound. Was that what had happened to Ryker at the restaurant? Had someone slipped him this triggering agent, knowing he took Zelvatrax, a drug with a similar neurochemical profile to Neuroxal? The pieces were aligning with horrifying clarity. Ryker had said he was dying of frontotemporal dementia, a condition that affected the same neural pathways her mother had been researching. What if his condition wasn't natural? What if he was being slowly poisoned by the same binary weapon her mother had discovered? And Lawrence Pierce, he had recognized her immediately. The way he had looked at her, It wasn't just recognition, it was calculation, as if she were a variable in an equation he needed to solve. The subway doors opened at Penn Station, and Mia merged with the crowd, constantly scanning for men in suits or anyone paying too much attention to her. The station was a hive of activity even at this late hour, providing welcome anonymity. She found a convenience store with an ancient payphone in the back, partially hidden behind a rack of tourist t-shirts. Feeding it quarters, she dialed her aunt's number, praying the woman still maintained the same landline she'd had for decades. "Hello?" Judith's voice was suspicious. No one called landlines at 11:30 p.m. anymore. "Aunt Judith, it's Mia. Don't say my name out loud. I need your help." There was a pause. "What's wrong, dear?" Judith's voice dropped to a whisper. "Mom's music box. Do you still have it?" Another pause, longer this time. "Yes, in the attic." "Why?" "I need to see it. Tonight. It's about Mom. About what really happened to her." "Mia, you're scaring me." "I'm scared too. Please, can you check if it's still there? Don't tell anyone I called. I'll explain everything when I see you." "All right, when will you?" "I can't say over the phone. Just be careful. And if anyone asks about me, you haven't heard from me in months." Mia hung up, her heart pounding. The music box, whatever evidence her mother had hidden 20 years ago, might still be there, waiting to be discovered. Evidence that could expose a conspiracy reaching into the highest level of one of the world's most powerful pharmaceutical companies. As she exited the convenience store, Mia caught a glimpse of a familiar face across the station concourse. The man from the hospital, Lawrence Pierce's assistant, scanning the crowds with predatory focus. They were already here. Somehow, they had gotten ahead of her. Ducking behind a pillar, Mia changed direction, abandoning her plan for the bus terminal. They would be watching all obvious exit routes. She needed a place to hide, to think, to plan her next move. And then it hit her. The one place they might not look for her immediately. The place where this had all begun. Lumiere Restaurant. Lumiere after midnight was a different world. The dining room, so recently filled with power brokers and celebrities, now stood empty, chairs inverted atop pristine tablecloths. In the kitchen, the late-night cleaning crew worked methodically, erasing all evidence of the evening's service. Mia slipped in through the employee entrance, punching in the code that hadn't changed in 6 years. She kept her head down as she passed the dish pit, nodding to Miguel, who raised an eyebrow but didn't question her unexpected return. The employee locker room was empty, a small mercy. Mia pulled out her spare uniform from her locker and changed quickly. In the waitstaff attire, she could blend in, become invisible again. It was the closest thing to a disguise she had. Her hands shook as she buttoned the crisp white shirt. The events of the past 6 hours felt surreal, like she had stumbled into someone else's life, or rather, into her mother's final days. Catherine Winters had uncovered a conspiracy, had threatened to expose it, and had died. Now Mia held that same dangerous knowledge, and the same people were hunting her. "Thought you were off tonight." Mia startled at the voice. Marco, the head bartender, stood in the doorway, his expression curious but not suspicious. "Forgot something," she lied, forcing a casual shrug. "Figured I'd grab it before tomorrow's shift." Marco nodded, seemingly satisfied. "Hell of a thing earlier with Ryker. You really saved his ass." "Just happened to notice something was wrong." Mia deflected. "Chef says the health department's coming tomorrow, routine, but they always get jumpy when someone has a medical episode in the dining room." He yawned. "I'm heading out. You need anything?" Mia shook her head. "I'm good. Just grabbing my stuff and going." After Marco left, Mia waited 5 minutes, then made her way to Chef André's office. The French chef was notoriously old school. He kept paper records of everything and mistrusted digital systems. More importantly, he kept a landline phone that wasn't connected to the restaurant's main system. The office was dark and empty. Chef had likely left hours ago after the dinner service wound down. Mia slipped inside and locked the door behind her. She found the phone and dialed a number she knew by heart. Her old academic advisor at medical school, Dr. Eleanor Chen. It rang 4 times before a groggy voice answered. "Hello, Dr. Chen, it's Mia Winters. I'm sorry to call so late." There was a pause. Then, "Mia, it's been, 3 years. I need your help," Mia said, cutting to the chase. It's about my mother's research. Dr. Chen had known Catherine Winters. They had been colleagues briefly before Catherine's death. More importantly, Eleanor Chen was one of the few people who had defended Catherine's reputation when everyone else had been quick to condemn her. This isn't a secure line, Mia. Dr. Chen's voice had lost all traces of sleep. Where are you? Somewhere temporary. I can't go home. People are looking for me. What happened? Mia took a deep breath. I found my mother's research journal. She discovered something about a compound called P173, something that got her killed. The silence on the other end stretched for several seconds. Come to my place, Dr. Chen finally said. Use the service entrance. I'll be waiting. Mia wrote down the address, then hesitated. I think I'm being followed. If I lead them to you, I have resources you don't, Dr. Chen interrupted, and friends in places that might help. Your mother wasn't the only one who suspected something was wrong with the P173 trials. The revelation sent a jolt through Mia. You knew. I had suspicion. Nothing concrete enough to act on. Catherine was always braver than me. Dr. Chen's voice tightened. Come now. We'll talk when you're here. Mia hung up, a new determination settling over her. She wasn't alone in this fight. There were others who had questioned the official narrative, people who might help her uncover the truth. As she turned to leave the office, she caught sight of a television mounted in the corner. It was tuned to an overnight news channel, the volume muted. A familiar face filled the screen. Alexander Ryker, looking remarkably recovered as he descended the hospital steps flanked by security. The ticker at the bottom read, Pharmaceuticals CEO Ryker released from hospital after minor medical incident. Minor incident. They were already sanitizing the story, controlling the narrative. Mia slipped out of the office and headed toward the service exit at the back of the restaurant. The kitchen was nearly empty now, just one dishwasher finishing up. She nodded to him and pushed through the door into the alley behind Lumiere. The night air was cool on her face, the alley quiet except for the distant sounds of traffic. She had made it 10 steps when a sleek black car pulled into the alley's entrance, its headlights momentarily blinding her. Mia froze, her heart hammering against her ribs. The car stopped, its engine idling. The passenger door opened, and a familiar figure emerged. Lawrence Pierce's assistant, the man she had spotted at Penn Station. Ms. Winters, he called, his voice echoing in the narrow space. Mr. Pierce would like a word. Mia backed away slowly. It's late. I have nothing to say to him. This isn't optional. His hand moved to his jacket, the implication clear. Mr. Pierce values discretion. Let's not make a scene. Mia's mind raced. The alley stretched behind her, but she knew it ended in a high fence. There was nowhere to run. How did you find me? She asked, playing for time, scanning her surroundings for anything that might serve as a weapon or escape route. The man smiled thinly. Your phone, Ms. Winters, quite careless to keep it on. Mia cursed herself. Of course, the most basic surveillance technique. She had been so focused on the immediate threat that she'd overlooked the obvious. Now, please get in the car. Mr. Pierce is waiting. I don't think she will. The new voice came from behind the car. A woman stepped into view, her silver hair gleaming under the alley's security lights. Dr. Eleanor Chen, elegant even in hastily donned clothes, stood with a confidence that belied her 60 years. And beside her, 2 men whose bearing screamed law enforcement. FBI, one of the men announced, holding up a badge. Step away from Ms. Winters. Pierce's assistant froze, his hand still halfway to his concealed weapon. I wouldn't, the agent advised. This alley has 4 cameras on it, and we have a warrant for your employer that I'm sure you'd love to hear about. The assistant's face contorted with rage, but he slowly raised his hands. This is a misunderstanding. Always is, the agent replied dryly. He nodded to Mia. Ms. Winters, Dr. Chen suggested you might need assistance tonight. Lucky coincidence we were in the neighborhood. Mia's legs nearly buckled with relief. She moved quickly toward Dr. Chen, who embraced her briefly. I told you I had resources, the older woman murmured. I've been working with them for months, building a case. As the FBI agents handcuffed Pierce's assistant, Dr. Chen guided Mia toward a different car, waiting at the other end of the alley. We need to move quickly, she said. This is just one operative. Pierce has many more. Where are we going? Mia asked, sliding into the back seat. First, to secure your mother's journal, then to retrieve whatever she hid in that music box. Dr. Chen's expression was grim. And then to find Alexander Ryker before they silence him too. As the car pulled away, Mia looked back to see the FBI agents leading the assistant toward a separate vehicle. It should have felt like a victory, but something about the man's expression, not defeated, but almost amused, sent a chill down her spine. "He doesn't seem worried," she observed. Dr. Chen's mouth tightened into a thin line. "That's what concerns me. The Helix Directive has tentacles in every branch of government. Those agents are among the few I trust, but we can't count on institutional protection." "The Helix Directive," Mia repeated. "My mother mentioned it in her journal. What is it?" "Not what, who." Dr. Chen's eyes met hers in the rearview mirror. "A consortium of pharmaceutical executives, military contractors, and government officials who saw potential in your mother's research that went far beyond treating neurological disorders. Weaponization," Mia said softly. "The perfect assassination tool," Dr. Chen confirmed. "Untraceable, plausibly deniable. A compound that appears therapeutic but can be triggered to become lethal under specific conditions. Like what happened to Ryker tonight," Mia realized. "Someone administered the triggering compound." Dr. Chen nodded. "But you interrupted the process. You recognized what was happening because you had studied the same pathways your mother discovered. That makes you uniquely dangerous to them and uniquely valuable to us." The implications settled over Mia like a heavy cloak. Her mother's research, her own abandoned studies, Ryker's medical crisis, all pieces of a puzzle 20 years in the making. "Why now?" she asked. "Why is all this happening after 20 years? Dr. Chen's expression darkened. "Because Alexander Ryker is dying, and he's decided not to go quietly. He's been feeding information to my FBI contacts for months. Tonight wasn't the first attempt on his life, just the most public." The car turned onto the highway, accelerating into the night. Behind them, the glittering skyline of Manhattan receded, and with it, the life Mia had known ahead lay Rochester, Aunt Judith, and the music box that held the final pieces of Catherine Winter's legacy. And somewhere in between, Alexander Ryker was fighting his own battle against the very weapons his company had helped create. The pre-dawn highway stretched before them like a ribbon of obsidian, empty save for the occasional long-haul truck. Dr. Chen drove with the focused precision of someone accustomed to crisis, her silver hair pulled back in a hasty bun, her eyes never leaving the road. Beside her, Agent Donovan maintained a watchful silence, his hand resting near his holstered weapon. In the back seat, Mia pored over her mother's journal by the glow of her phone's flashlight, searching for any details she might have missed. The pages now felt like sacred text, the last testament of a brilliant mind silenced before its time. "Oh, when did you start suspecting something was wrong with the official story?" Mia asked, breaking the tense silence. Dr. Chen's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. "About 5 years after your mother died, one of my patients exhibited unusual neurological symptoms after participating in a Ryker Holdings trial. The symptom profile was eerily similar to something Catherine had described to me before her death. Why didn't you come forward?" "I tried." Dr. Chen's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "The medical board dismissed my concerns as coincidental. My research funding was suddenly under review. Then my office was broken into, nothing taken, just disturbed. A warning." Agent Donovan shifted in his seat. "Dr. Chen approached our office 2 years ago after connecting with other researchers who had experienced similar intimidation. We've been building a case slowly, carefully." "And Ryker?" Mia pressed. "When did he get involved?" 8 months ago," Dr. Chen replied. "After his diagnosis, he reached out through encrypted channels, claimed he wanted to set things right before he died. Can we trust him?" Mia couldn't keep the skepticism from her voice. After all, Ryker had been part of the system that destroyed her mother. "I don't," Agent Donovan said bluntly, "but his information has checked out so far, and he's provided documentation we couldn't have obtained otherwise." Mia returned to the journal, flipping to her mother's final entries. "She mentions evidence hidden in the music box. What do you think it is?" "Hard data, hopefully," Dr. Chen said. "Lab results, trial records. Something concrete that proves the weaponization program exists. Something that links the Helix Directive to specific individuals, like Lawrence Pierce." Doctor. Chen's expression hardened. Pierce is just the visible face. The directive includes military officials, intelligence operatives, even foreign interests. They saw the potential in P-173 immediately, a compound that could eliminate targets while mimicking natural neurological events, heart attacks, strokes, seizures, even accelerated dementia, like what Ryker is experiencing. The implication hit Mia like a physical blow. You think they've been poisoning him slowly with his own company's drug? Poetic justice, Agent Donovan murmured, or a warning to others who might consider talking. Mia's phone buzzed with an incoming text. She glanced down, expecting to see a message from her aunt confirming their arrival. Instead, an unknown number. I know where you're going. The music box isn't there anymore. Meet me at the Overlook Motel, room 14. Come alone, or Judith dies. No police. Attached was a photo. Aunt Judith, unconscious or asleep in what appeared to be a motel room, a newspaper dated today visible beside her. Mia's blood turned to ice. Stop the car, she whispered. Dr. Chen glanced back, alarmed by her tone. What's wrong? Wordlessly, Mia showed them the message. It's a trap, Agent Donovan stated immediately. We need to call for backup and risk my aunt's life. Mia's voice rose. The text says, come alone. Dr. Chen pulled the car onto the shoulder, emergency lights flashing. Think this through, Mia. If they have Judith, they may already have the music box. They're trying to get you too. Or they're bluffing, Agent Donovan added. They might not have her at all. Mia stared at the photo, studying every detail. The room looked generic, standard motel decor, but in the background, partially visible on the nightstand, was a distinctive medication bottle, her aunt's prescription arthritis medication with its bright yellow label. This is real, she said quietly. That's her medication, and she wears that nightgown. She looked up, her decision made. I have to go. Not alone, Dr. Chen insisted. I'll call for a tactical team, Agent Donovan began, reaching for his phone. No! Mia grabbed his arm. I've read enough of my mother's journal to know these people have connections everywhere. How do you know your tactical team won't be compromised? The agent's hesitation confirmed her fears. The Overlook Motel is 15 minutes from here, Mia continued. I'll go in alone, as instructed, but you two can position yourselves nearby. If I don't come out in 30 minutes, or if I send a distress signal, then you intervene. Neither Dr. Chen nor Agent Donovan looked convinced, but they seemed to recognize the logic in her plan and the lack of better alternatives. What's the distress signal? Agent Donovan asked finally. I'll text the word coffee, Mia replied. Casual enough that it won't raise suspicions if they're monitoring my phone. 20 minutes later, Mia stood outside room 14 of the Overlook Motel, a decaying roadside establishment that had seen better decades. The morning sun was just beginning to break over the horizon, casting long shadows across the nearly empty parking lot. She knocked twice, her heart hammering against her ribs. The door opened to reveal a man she had never seen before, early 40s, with the muscular build of a former athlete and the watchful eyes of someone accustomed to violence. He wore a suit that barely concealed the bulge of a shoulder holster. Ms. Winters, he said, stepping aside to let her enter. Prompt, I appreciate that. The room was exactly as it had appeared in the photo. Aunt Judith lay on the bed, her breathing steady but her eyes closed. Beside her sat a familiar figure, Alexander Ryker, looking far more haggard than he had on the hospital steps just hours ago. I'm sorry for the theatrics, Ryker said, his voice strained, but we needed to ensure you came quickly and without a full FBI entourage. Mia's confusion must have shown on her face, because the suited man, clearly Ryker's security, spoke up. Your aunt is fine. Mild sedative to keep her calm. Mr. Ryker explained the situation to her before she agreed to help. Help with what? Mia demanded, moving to her aunt's side and checking her pulse. It was strong and steady. Ryker gestured to the small table by the window. On it sat her mother's music box, the delicate antique carved from rosewood that had played Debussy as Mia drifted to sleep throughout her childhood. Judith gave it to us willingly, Ryker explained. After I convinced her who I was and what was at stake, why not just call me? Why this? Mia gestured around the motel room. Elaborate setup. Because my security team discovered 3 separate tracking devices on my person after leaving the hospital, Ryker replied grimly. My phone, my watch, even a nano chip embedded in my belt. The directive is watching my every move. He nodded to his security guard. Matheson is the only member of my team I still trust. He helped me disappear. And the FBI agents with Dr. Chen? Mia asked, suddenly worried for her companions waiting nearby. Agent Donovan is legitimate, Ryker assured her. One of the few, but his communications are almost certainly monitored. That's why we needed you away from them. Just for a moment, Matheson moved to the window, scanning the parking lot with professional vigilance. We should hurry, sir. Ryker nodded and gestured to the music box. Open it, Mia. Your mother left this for you. Only you. With trembling fingers, Mia approached the music box. It was smaller than she remembered, perhaps because she had last seen it through a child's eyes. The wood was polished to a soft glow, the inlaid mother of pearl still gleaming after all these years. She lifted the lid, and the familiar notes of Claire de Lune filled the room. Inside, on the velvet lining, lay a small key, old-fashioned, made of tarnished brass. That's it? Mia couldn't hide her disappointment. Look underneath, Ryker suggested quietly. Mia carefully removed the velvet lining. Beneath it was a false bottom, and under that, a small glass vial containing what appeared to be a microchip and a handwritten note in her mother's precise script. Storage locker 217. Central Station. The key opens both locks. Everything is here. Original data, video testimony, the complete P173 files, enough to expose them all. If you're reading this, I'm gone. Be smarter than I was. Trust no one completely. Not even Alexander. Her mother's final warning included the very man who now sat before her, claiming to help. Mia looked up, meeting Ryker's gaze. She said not to trust you completely. A sad smile touched his lips. Catherine was right. I failed her 20 years ago. I chose self-preservation over doing what was right. His hands trembled slightly, whether from emotion or his progressing condition. Mia couldn't tell. Oh no, I'm trying to correct that mistake now. But yes, verify everything I tell you. Trust the evidence, not me. Aunt Judith stirred on the bed, her eyelids fluttering. We need to move, Matheson said urgently. We've been here too long. Ryker stood, his movements betraying his weakened state. Take the vial, go to the storage locker. Dr. Chen can help you authenticate the contents and get them to the right people. He handed her a small device that resembled a thumb drive. This contains what I've managed to gather. Financial records linking Pierce to offshore accounts that funded the Helix Directive. Internal memos about special applications for P173. What about you? Mia asked, pocketing both items. I have one more card to play, Ryker replied cryptically. Or one more piece of evidence they don't know I have. Judith's eyes opened fully, blinking in confusion. Mia, she murmured. Is that you? I'm here, Aunt Judith. Mia moved to her side. You're safe. As she comforted her aunt, Matheson suddenly tensed at the window. Black SUV just pulled in. Government plates. Ryker's expression hardened. They've found us. Take your aunt and go. Mia, now! The motel room erupted into controlled chaos. Matheson moved with military precision, pulling blackout curtains closed while simultaneously drawing his weapon. Ryker helped Judith to her feet, murmuring reassurances as the elderly woman struggled to shake off the sedative's effects. Back exit, Matheson ordered, moving to the bathroom and pushing open the small window. And it's tight. But we can make it. Mia pocketed the microchip and key before texting Dr. Chen, coffee, their prearranged distress signal. Who's out there? She asked, helping her aunt toward the bathroom. Directive assets, Matheson replied grimly. They operate under various agency covers, FBI, CIA, NSA, but they answer to Pierce and his consortium. Outside, car doors slammed. Footsteps approached. And Mia, you and your aunt go first, Ryker instructed, his voice tight with urgency. Matheson and I will follow. No, Mia countered, surprising herself with her own conviction. You're the primary target, and you're already weakened. You go first with Matheson. We'll follow. Before Ryker could argue, a harsh knock rattled the door. Federal agents. Open up. Matheson nodded to Mia, acknowledging the logic of her plan. He helped Ryker through the window first, the billionaire's movements hampered by his deteriorating condition. Then Matheson slipped through with surprising agility for his size. "Come on, Aunt Judith," Mia whispered, guiding the disoriented woman toward the window. "Just like when we used to sneak out to watch meteor showers. Remember?" Judith managed a weak smile. "I was supposed to be the responsible one." Another knock, more insistent. "A final warning before we breach." Judith struggled through the window with Mia's help. As Mia prepared to follow, the door splintered open. She dove through the opening just as the first agent burst into the room. A hand grabbed her ankle. Mia kicked instinctively, connecting with something solid. The grip loosened, and she tumbled onto the gravel behind the motel. Matheson was already helping Judith into a nondescript sedan parked in the service alley. Ryker held the back door open, gesturing frantically for Mia to hurry. A shout from behind. "Suspect fleeing! East side!" Mia sprinted toward the car, diving into the back seat as Matheson gunned the engine. They fishtailed onto a service road just as agents rounded the corner of the building, weapons drawn. "And they stay down," Matheson ordered, expertly navigating the sedan through the motel's back exit and onto a county highway. Mia crouched in the footwell, her aunt trembling beside her, Ryker's hand steadying them both as the car accelerated. No shots were fired. They wouldn't risk hitting Ryker, Mia realized. They needed him alive, at least until they recovered whatever evidence he possessed. After several minutes of tense silence, Matheson spoke. "I think we're clear. No pursuit vehicles." Mia cautiously raised her head. Through the rear window, she could see only empty roads stretching behind them. "They'll set up roadblocks," Ryker said, his breathing labored from the exertion. "We need to switch vehicles." "Already arranged," Matheson replied, checking his rearview mirror with professional paranoia. "Dr. Chen and Agent Donovan." "I sent the distress signal," Mia confirmed. "They should be moving to intercept." Judith had regained more of her composure. "Would someone please explain what's happening?" she demanded, sounding more like the formidable aunt Mia remembered from childhood. "Alexander gave me some outlandish story about Catherine being murdered and conspiracies in pharmaceutical companies." "It's all true, Aunt Judith," Mia said softly. "Mom didn't kill herself. She discovered something dangerous, and they silenced her." Judith's face crumpled. "All these years, I never believed she would leave you willingly." She turned to Ryker, her expression hardening. "And you were part of it." Ryker met her accusatory gaze unflinchingly. "Not of her death, but of the system that made it possible. Yes, my inaction makes me complicit." "He's dying, Aunt Judith," Mia explained. "We, the same people who killed Mom, are killing him. Slowly, with the very compound she was researching." Matheson turned onto a dirt access road that cut through dense woodland. "Vehicle switch is half a mile ahead, then we separate. Harder to track multiple targets." "Separate?" Mia questioned. "But the evidence is safer distributed," Ryker interrupted. "You have the key and coordinates to the storage locker. I have documentation of current Helix operation. Matheson has proof of financial transaction." He gestured to Judith. "And your aunt is the only living person who knew Catherine's real research focus before it was weaponized." Judith startled. "What? Mom shared her work with you?" Mia asked, equally surprised. "Not explicitly," Judith said slowly, realization dawning. "But she sent me research papers to proofread. She always did, even when I couldn't understand the technical details." She looked at Ryker. "You think those papers contained her genuine findings?" Ryker nodded. "Catherine was brilliant. She would have embedded her real discoveries within seemingly innocuous academic papers, a backup in plain sight." The car slowed as they approached a small clearing where two vehicles waited, a weathered pickup truck and Dr. Chen's sedan. Dr. Chen and Agent Donovan rushed forward as Matheson stopped their car. "What happened?" Dr. Chen demanded, helping Mia and Judith out. "Directive operatives," Ryker explained tersely. "They're tracking me specifically. We need to separate." Agent Donovan looked skeptical. "Splitting up limits our protective resources. It also limits their ability to capture all the evidence at once." Matheson countered. Her divide and conquer works both ways. A tense debate followed, with Donovan advocating for consolidation and official channels, while Ryker insisted that the directive's reach made traditional protective measures useless. We have 12 hours at most before they reconfigure their surveillance net, Ryker argued. We need to act now, independently, then converge at a secure location with all evidence intact. Finally, a compromise was reached. Mia and Dr. Chen would take the pickup truck to Central Station and retrieve the contents of storage locker 217. Agent Donovan would escort Judith to his field office to recover and analyze the research papers she had preserved. Ryker and Matheson would pursue their own lead, something about a contingency server containing backup records of the Helix Directive's activities. As they prepared to separate, Ryker pulled Mia aside. "Your mother was right not to trust me fully," he said quietly. "I chose my company over the truth 20 years ago. But know this, I'm not the only one with divided loyalties in this group." "What do you mean?" "The directive has penetrated every level of government and industry. They've had 2 decades to place their people strategically." His blue eyes, clouded with illness but still sharp, met hers. "Watch for inconsistencies. Trust patterns of behavior, not words." Before Mia could press for clarification, Matheson called for Ryker. With a final, meaningful look, the billionaire joined his security chief in the sedan. Dr. Chen approached, keys to the pickup in hand. "Ready?" Mia embraced her aunt, whispering, "Be careful," before joining Dr. Chen in the truck. As they pulled away, following separate roads out of the clearing, Mia finally asked the question that had been brewing since Ryker's cryptic warning. "How well do you know Agent Donovan?" Dr. Chen's hands tightened on the steering wheel. 5 years. He approached me after I published a paper questioning the neurological side effects of certain Ryker pharmaceuticals. "And you trust him completely?" Dr. Chen shot her a sidelong glance. "In this business, completely is a dangerous word," she sighed. "What did Ryker tell you?" "That someone in our group has divided loyalties," Mia admitted. "That the directive has people everywhere." "He's right about their reach," Dr. Chen conceded. "As for Donovan, he's been reliable so far. But your mother's warning is sound. Verify everything." They drove in silence for several minutes before Mia spoke again. "Why would they keep pursuing this weapons program for 20 years? What's the end game?" Dr. Chen's expression darkened. "Think about it. A compound that can be administered widely as a beneficial medication, but which creates a vulnerability that can be triggered at will. Targeted assassinations that look like natural deaths, or scaled-up mass casualty events that appear natural." Mia finished, horror washing over her. "Heart attacks, strokes, seizures, an entire population primed for neurological collapse whenever they choose to activate it. Neuroxal is prescribed to millions of patients worldwide," Dr. Chen confirmed grimly, "including military personnel, government officials, and corporate leaders. The perfect Trojan horse." The implications were staggering. Not just targeted assassinations, but potentially the largest-scale bioweapon ever conceived, hiding in plain sight as a beneficial medication. "And my mother discovered this 20 years ago," Mia whispered, "before they had fully developed it." "She was ahead of her time," Dr. Chen said, "as brilliant scientists often are, and equally dangerous to those with something to hide." The pickup truck merged onto the highway toward Central Station, carrying them toward the evidence Catherine Winters had hidden 2 decades earlier. Evidence that might finally expose the truth behind her death and prevent countless others. Behind them, unseen in the early morning traffic, a dark sedan pulled onto the highway at a discreet distance, its driver speaking quietly into a communications device. Target acquired, proceeding to intercept at the station. Central Station loomed ahead, its grand facade a monument to a more elegant era of travel. The morning rush was in full swing, commuters streaming through the cavernous main hall, tourists snapping photos of the celestial ceiling, and security personnel scanning the crowds with practiced indifference. Dr. Chen parked the pickup 3 blocks away, in a public garage with multiple exits. "We go in separately," she instructed, handing Mia a baseball cap. "Put your hair up under this, keep your head down, but not conspicuously so. We'll meet at the north end of the main concourse." As Mia tucked her hair beneath the cap, Dr. Chen continued, "If you spot surveillance, Don't react. Continue to the meeting point. If I'm not there within 5 minutes, proceed to the storage area alone. How will you know if I've been compromised? Mia asked. Authentication question when we meet. I'll ask what your mother liked to drink in the mornings. The correct answer is Earl Grey with honey, never sugar. Dr. Chen's expression softened momentarily. Catherine was very particular about her tea. The small detail, so mundane, yet so intimately true about her mother, made Mia's throat tighten. This woman had truly known Catherine Winters, had preserved these small memories of her for 2 decades. They separated outside the garage, Dr. Chen walking briskly toward the station's south entrance, while Mia took a more circuitous route through a coffee shop, emerging with a cup she didn't want, but which provided excellent camouflage among the morning commuters. Central Station's main hall was a symphony of controlled chaos. The click of heels on marble, the electronic chime of departure announcements, the low murmur of hundreds of conversations blending into white noise. Mia moved with the flow of foot traffic, her eyes constantly scanning for men in suits, for anyone paying too much attention to her. Near the north end of the concourse, a commotion erupted. A man had collapsed, drawing a crowd of concerned onlookers. Medical personnel rushed forward. For a moment, Mia froze, her mind flashing back to Ryker's collapse at Lumiere. Was this another episode? Another victim of the binary weapon? The distraction nearly caused her to miss Dr. Chen's arrival. The older woman appeared at her side, expression tense. What does your mother like to drink in the mornings? Dr. Chen asked without preamble. Earl Grey with honey, never sugar, Mia replied. Dr. Chen nodded, visibly relieved. The storage areas are in the lower level. Let's move. As they headed toward the escalators, Mia gestured toward the medical emergency. Is that a distraction technique? Dr. Chen confirmed grimly, creating a scene to flush out targets. They're watching who reacts, who shows recognition. She kept her gaze forward. You hesitated. We need to move faster. The lower level of Central Station housed various services, luggage storage, locker rentals, maintenance facilities. The storage section was monitored by a bored-looking attendant behind bulletproof glass. Locker 217, Dr. Chen stated, as Mia produced the key from the music box. The attendant barely looked up from his crossword puzzle. ID and rental agreement. Dr. Chen smiled pleasantly. It's a legacy rental from before the digital system. This got his attention. He frowned, tapping at his computer. Those should all be cleared out by now. Name: Catherine Winters, Mia said, her voice steady despite the surge of emotion at speaking her mother's name in this context. The attendant's eyes widened slightly. That's over 20 years old. He studied his screen. Says here it's paid through 2030. Annual payments from a trust account. He shook his head. System must be glitched. Let me call my supervisor. No need, Dr. Chen interjected smoothly. We have the key and proper identification. She slid an ID through the slot, a perfect replica of Catherine Winters' hospital badge, with Dr. Chen's photo substituted. We're executing the terms of Dr. Winters' estate. The attendant hesitated, clearly torn between procedure and the desire to avoid paperwork. Finally, he buzzed them through. Locker area is down the hall. No cameras allowed. Contents removed must be logged. Once past the security door, Dr. Chen whispered, Catherine arranged for the payments through a shell account. She thought of everything. The storage room was climate-controlled, rows of metal lockers lining the walls. They found 217 in the far corner, a larger unit about the size of a small filing cabinet. Mia inserted the key with trembling fingers. It turned with surprising ease for a lock unused for 20 years. Inside was a single item, a weathered leather briefcase with the initials KW embossed in the corner. We need to check it before leaving, Dr. Chen said, glancing nervously at the door. Make sure the contents are intact. Mia placed the briefcase on a nearby table and opened it. Inside were several items: a sealed evidence bag containing what appeared to be vials of medication, a thick binder of research notes, a small external hard drive that looked surprisingly modern for something from 2003, and a DVD in a protective case labeled Testimony. The hard drive isn't original, Mia observed. examining it. Someone's transferred data to newer storage. Dr. Chen nodded. Ryker. He mentioned maintaining the evidence. He must have periodically updated the storage medium to prevent data degradation. So he's known about this all along, Mia said, a new wave of anger washing over her. He could have come forward years ago. Fear is a powerful motivator for silence, Dr. Chen replied, and leverage for control. She carefully repacked the briefcase. We have what we need. Let's go. As they exited the storage area, the attendant barely glanced up to log their departure. They were halfway to the escalators when Mia noticed something that made her blood run cold. The man who had collapsed in the main hall was now standing near the exit, speaking into his wrist mic, his eyes scanning the crowd with predatory focus. We've been made, she whispered to Dr. Chen. Keep walking, Dr. Chen instructed calmly. Alternate exit through the metro connection. Don't run. They changed direction subtly, moving toward the subway entrance on the far side of the lower level. Mia clutched the briefcase tightly, hyper-aware of its contents, evidence that people had killed for Dimo, had destroyed her mother's life for Dimo. They were 20 feet from the metro entrance when two men in dark suits emerged from it, their eyes locking onto Dr. Chen with immediate recognition. A change of plan, Dr. Chen muttered, abruptly steering Mia toward a service corridor marked Authorized Personnel Only. They're boxing us in, Mia realized, panic rising in her throat. There's a maintenance exit that leads to the delivery bays, Dr. Chen explained, pushing through the door. I memorized the station layout before we came. The service corridor was dimly lit and mercifully empty. They moved quickly, following signs for loading area B. Behind them, the door burst open, footsteps echoing on concrete. Stop! Federal agents! A voice commanded. Dr. Chen pulled Mia around a corner, then unexpectedly shoved her into a supply closet. Take this, she said, pressing a small object into Mia's hand, a flash drive, backup of key files. Get to Ryker's contact. The address is encoded in your mother's journal, the book's cipher passage. What about you? Mia protested. I'll lead them away with the briefcase. Before Mia could argue, Dr. Chen closed the closet door, leaving her in darkness. Through the thin door, Mia heard Dr. Chen's footsteps receding, followed by the sound of pursuit, then silence. She waited, heart pounding, for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. When she finally dared to crack the door open, the corridor was empty. The flash drive felt impossibly small for something so important. She pocketed it and slipped out of the closet, moving cautiously toward what she hoped was the exit. The maintenance door led, as Dr. Chen had promised, to a loading bay where delivery trucks were offloading supplies for the station's restaurants and shop. Mia blended in with the workers, keeping her head down until she reached the street. There was no sign of Dr. Chen or their pursuers. The pickup truck would be compromised now. She needed alternative transportation and a secure location to examine the flash drive and decode the address from her mother's journal. As she walked briskly away from the station, a text message vibrated her phone. Unknown number. Chen in custody. They don't have the drive. Go to St. Margaret's Hospital, radiology department. Ask for Dr. Elias. He was your mother's colleague. Hurry. Ryker. Somehow he knew what had happened. Did that mean he was tracking her too? Or that he had sources within the directive itself? Trust patterns of behavior, not words, he had warned her. But what pattern could she discern in the fragmented interactions she'd had with any of these people? She hailed a taxi, giving an address several blocks from St. Margaret's, better to approach indirectly, to watch for surveillance before committing. As the taxi pulled into traffic, Mia finally had a moment to process what had happened. Dr. Chen had sacrificed herself, using the briefcase as a decoy to ensure the flash drive escape. But was the briefcase also genuine, or had Chen anticipated their interception? Was the real evidence on the drive, or had that too been compromised? And who was Dr. Elias, another player in this decades-long chess game she'd been thrust into? The journal's book, Cipher Passage. She pulled out her mother's journal, flipping to the entry Dr. Chen had referenced, a seemingly innocuous paragraph about neural pathway mapping that Catherine had written just before her death. Mia had studied cryptography briefly during her medical training, fascinated by the parallels between code breaking and diagnostic reasoning. A book cipher would use specific words or letters from the text to form a message, but without knowing the key, her eyes fell on a sequence of numbers in the margin of the page, disguised as measurement notations: 3, 5, 17, 6, 42 to 2, 8, 11, 29 to 7. Page numbers and word positions. She began counting, jotting down the corresponding words from each location. The old church basement archives hold truth. St. Margaret's Hospital had originally been St. Margaret's Church before being converted in the 1950s. The basement still housed the hospital's archives and oldest medical records. Mia looked out the taxi window at the city, streaming by, countless lives untouched by the shadow war being waged in their midst. Somewhere, Dr. Chen was being interrogated. Somewhere, Ryker was pursuing his own angle of the investigation. Somewhere, her Aunt Judith was reviewing 20-year-old research papers that might contain the key to unraveling the entire conspiracy. And here she was, a waitress with an unfinished medical degree, carrying a flash drive that could save millions of lives, or end hers in an instant. St. Margaret's Hospital stood in stark contrast to Mount Sinai's gleaming modernity. The converted Gothic church retained much of its original architecture: stone arches, stained glass windows retrofitted with privacy film, and a facade that spoke more of salvation than surgery. The newer medical wings sprouted from the original structure like contemporary afterthoughts. Mia paid the taxi driver and walked 3 blocks past her destination, doubling back through a public park to approach the hospital from the opposite direction. The morning had aged into early afternoon, the sun high overhead, casting sharp shadows across the hospital grounds. She entered through the emergency department, reasoning it would have the least security and the most public traffic. Inside, she blended with the flow of visitors, following signs toward the radiology department on the 3rd floor. The elevator doors opened to reveal a typical hospital corridor: off-white walls, linoleum flooring, the antiseptic smell that clung to all medical facilities. A sign directed patients to check in at the reception desk, where a young man in scrubs was sorting through files. "I'm looking for Dr. Elias," Mia said, keeping her voice low. The receptionist didn't look up. "Dr. Elias is in procedure. Do you have an appointment?" "It's regarding Catherine Winter's research," Mia replied, the words feeling like a password. The effect was immediate. The receptionist's head snapped up, his eyes scrutinizing her face. After a moment of tense silence, he reached beneath the desk and pressed a button. "Ooh, wait here," he instructed, then disappeared through a door marked "Staff Only." Mia remained standing, hyper-aware of the security cameras mounted in the corners of the ceiling. The flash drive felt like it was burning a hole in her pocket. 5 minutes passed, then 10. She was considering leaving when the staff door reopened. An elderly man emerged, early 70s, with stooped shoulders and hands gnarled by arthritis. But his eyes were sharp and alert, taking in every detail of Mia's appearance. "Follow me," he said without introduction, his voice surprisingly strong for his frail appearance. He led her not to an examination room, but to a service elevator at the far end of the department. He used a key card to access it, then inserted an actual physical key into a panel below the regular buttons. "Basement level isn't on the public directory," he explained, finally looking directly at her. "You have Catherine's eyes, same intensity." The elevator descended with a gentle hum. "You're Dr. Elias?" "Marcus Elias. I worked with your mother in the early days, before Ryker Holdings recruited her." The elevator stopped, and the doors opened to reveal a dimly lit corridor. This way, the basement level smelled of old paper and neglect. They passed rows of filing cabinets and shelves laden with boxes, the physical archives of a hospital transitioning to digital records, but unable to dispose of decades of paper documentation. Dr. Elias led her to a small office at the end of the corridor. Unlike the cluttered archive, this space was meticulously organized, modern computer equipment sharing space with vintage medical texts. He closed the door and activated an electronic device on his desk that emitted a soft hum. "Signal jammer," he explained. "Primitive but effective. We have 20 minutes before it triggers security protocols." He gestured to a chair. "Show me what you have." Mia hesitated. "How do I know I can trust you?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Caution. Good. Catherine would be proud. He opened a drawer and removed a photograph, sliding it across the desk. The image showed a much younger Elias with his arm around Catherine Winters. They wore matching lab coats embroidered with St. Margaret's Neurological Research Initiative. Both were smiling broadly, holding what appeared to be research awards. We were partners before Ryker Holdings lured her away with promises of unlimited research funding, Elias said, his voice tinged with old regret. I warned her about corporate interests corrupting pure research. She didn't listen. Then why are you helping Ryker now? Mia challenged. I'm not helping him. I'm fulfilling a promise I made to your mother. Elias leaned forward. 3 days before she died, Catherine came to me. She was frightened, said she discovered something terrible. She made me promise that if anything happened to her, I would keep certain information safe until it could be used to expose the truth. Mia produced the flash drive. Dr. Chen gave me this before she was captured. She said it contains backup files from my mother's research. Elias took the drive with reverent care. Eleanor Chen. I've followed her work. She's been circling the truth for years. He inserted the drive into his computer, fingers flying across the keyboard as encryption protocols engaged. This will take a few minutes to decrypt. While the computer worked, Elias turned back to Mia. What do you know about your mother's research? The real research, not the sanitized version that made it into journals. She was studying neurotransmitter pathways. Mia replied, specifically how certain compounds could create vulnerabilities in neural networks that could be exploited by secondary compounds. Elias nodded approvingly. A simplified but accurate summary. What Catherine discovered was more precise. She identified a specific receptor configuration that, when bound with compounds like P173, created what she called a neural backdoor. The receptor itself remained dormant until activated by a triggering compound. The binary weapon, Mia murmured. Exactly, but Catherine realized something even more disturbing. This receptor configuration wasn't random. It appeared in approximately 12% of the population naturally. Elias's expression darkened. She believed it was evolutionary, a vestigial defense mechanism from our prehistoric past, allowing certain individuals to enter states of heightened performance under specific neurochemical conditions, like extreme stress responses, more specialized. Think of it as a neural switch that evolved to help humans survive specific environmental threat. In most people, it's dormant, harmless, but P173 binds to it, modifies it, makes it vulnerable to the triggering compound. The computer chimed, indicating the decryption was complete. Elias turned to the screen, scanning through the files. It's all here, he breathed. And Catherine's original research, unaltered trial data, video testimony from test subjects who experienced adverse effects. He looked up at Mia, his expression grave, and something else, a genetic marker profile. Genetic marker. Catherine discovered that certain genetic profiles were more susceptible to the neural backdoor manipulation. She began mapping these profiles, identifying individuals at highest risk. Elias pointed to a section of data. This is a list of genetic markers that indicate vulnerability. Mia leaned closer, studying the sequence. Something about it seemed familiar, triggering a distant memory from her medical genetics courses. Wait, she said, the realization striking her. This pattern, it's similar to markers for certain neurodivergent conditions, and some ethnic populations have higher frequencies of these markers. Elias nodded grimly. Now you understand why this was so valuable to certain interests. A neurological weapon that could target specific genetic profiles. The implications were staggering. Not just an assassination tool, but potentially an instrument of genocide, hidden within a beneficial medication. The Helix Directive isn't just about weaponizing medicine, Mia whispered. It's about developing targeted bioweapons. Catherine realized this too late, Elias confirmed. By then, she was already trapped in their system. He extracted the flash drive and handed it back to Mia. There's something else you should see. He moved to a filing cabinet, unlocking it with a key from his pocket. From inside, he withdrew a sealed medical file, your mother's autopsy report. The real one, not the altered version released to the public. He placed it on the desk. I was the attending physician. When they brought her in, I knew immediately it wasn't suicide. Mia's hands trembled as she opened the file. The medical examiner's notes were clinical and precise, documenting findings inconsistent with self-administered overdose, needle marks indicating involuntary injection, defensive wounds on her hands, unusual compound residues in tissue samples. They made it look like suicide, Mia said, her voice hollow with grief and rage. Murdered her and staged it, and buried the evidence. Elias checked his watch. And we have 5 minutes before the jammer triggers security protocols. You need to take this information to someone who can protect it, and you, not Ryker, he's compromised, dying or not. Who then? There's a journalist, Sofia Vargas, at the Global Investigative Alliance. She specializes in pharmaceutical industry corruption. Catherine trusted her. Elias wrote an address on a slip of paper. Go there, now. As Mia gathered the files, Elias's computer screen suddenly flickered. A security alert appeared. Unauthorized access detected. System breach in progress. They've found us, Elias said, his calm demeanor cracking. The signal jammer should have prevented this. He moved quickly to a bookshelf, pulling down a volume to reveal a hidden panel. Service tunnel. It connects to the old church catacombs. Exits 2 blocks away. He pressed a key into Mia's hand. Go. I'll delete the access logs. Make it look like a system glitch. Come with me, Mia urged, suddenly afraid for this link to her mother. Elias shook his head. I'm too old to run, and someone needs to create a diversion. His eyes, so like her mother's colleagues from her childhood memories, held a steely resolve. Catherine's research can save millions if used properly. Don't let them bury it again. With reluctance, Mia entered the hidden passage. The last thing she saw before the panel closed was Dr. Elias, calmly pouring alcohol over his computer and reaching for a lighter. The tunnel was narrow and damp, lit sporadically by ancient emergency lights. As Mia made her way through the darkness, a muffled explosion echoed behind her, Elias destroying the evidence of their meeting and likely sacrificing himself in the process. Another ally lost, another life claimed by a conspiracy that had begun before she was even born. When she emerged from the tunnel into a secluded courtyard, Mia checked her phone to find a new message. Chen escaped custody. Rendezvous compromised. Pierce knows about the genetic targeting data. Go to Vargas now. Atum, how did Ryker know she had met with Elias? How did he know about Vargas? The questions multiplied, but one thing was becoming increasingly clear. The web of connections surrounding her mother's research was far more intricate than she had imagined. And somewhere within that web lay the truth about why Alexander Ryker had recognized her in that restaurant, a truth that went beyond professional connection to her mother. The Global Investigative Alliance occupied 3 floors of a nondescript office building in the city's media district. Unlike the glossy headquarters of mainstream news outlets, the GIA's entrance was unmarked, save for a small plaque beside the security desk. It was an organization that preferred to be found by those who already knew where to look. Mia approached cautiously, scanning the street for surveillance. The flash drive and documents from Dr. Elias felt like radioactive material against her skin, their importance growing with each life sacrificed to protect them. At the security desk, a guard with the hyper-vigilant eyes of a former military operative assessed her. I'm here to see Sofia Vargas, Mia said, keeping her voice steady despite her exhaustion. Ms. Vargas doesn't take walk-ins, the guard replied, his tone neutral but firm. Tell her it's about Catherine Winters, research and the Helix Directive. The guard's expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted subtly. He picked up the phone, speaking too quietly for Mia to hear. After a brief conversation, he nodded. 15th floor. Someone will meet you at the elevator. The elevator ride felt endless. Mia's reflection in the polished doors showed a woman she barely recognized, hair disheveled, eyes hollowed by stress and lack of sleep, still wearing the clothes she'd put on for her waitressing shift, what felt like a lifetime ago. When the doors opened, a young woman with a press badge waited. "And this way," she said without introduction, leading Mia through an open office space where journalists worked at clustered desks, walls covered with investigation timelines and headline printouts. They arrived at a glass-walled conference room where a woman stood with her back to the door, studying a large digital display filled with interconnected names and organizations. Sofia Vargas turned as they entered, mid-40s, with sharp features and calculating eyes that betrayed no immediate reaction to Mia's appearance. "Catherine's daughter," she said simply. It wasn't a question. The assistant left, closing the door behind her. Vargas tapped a control panel, and the glass walls instantly frosted over, providing privacy. "Marcus Elias is dead," Vargas stated, watching Mia's reaction carefully. "A hospital fire in the archives. Officially an electrical malfunction." The news, while not unexpected, hit Mia like a physical blow. "He helped me escape, destroyed his own research to cover my tracks." Vargas nodded, unsurprised. "Marcus was always principled, one of the few." She gestured to a chair. "Show me what you have." Mia hesitated, suddenly overwhelmed by the responsibility she carried. "How do I know I can trust you?" "You don't," Vargas replied frankly. "But I've spent 15 years investigating the Helix Directive. I've lost 2 colleagues to accidents and survived 3 attempted lawsuits designed to bankrupt me. Your mother contacted me 3 days before her death." She reached into a drawer and removed a sealed envelope, yellowed with age. "She left this with me, said to give it to you when you were ready." The envelope bore Mia's name in her mother's handwriting. With trembling fingers, she opened it, finding a single sheet of paper inside. "My dearest Mia, if you're reading this, I've failed to expose the truth and likely paid the ultimate price. I'm so sorry for leaving you, for the burden this knowledge will place on you. But you've always been brilliant, stronger than you know, my greatest creation and deepest joy. Trust Sophia to help you navigate what comes next. Trust Eleanor to protect the science. And know this, Alexander Ryker is not who you think. The truth of his connection to us is complicated, but necessary for you to understand. When I discovered the potential for P-173 to be weaponized, I tried to stop the research. Alexander supported me initially, but Lawrence Pierce had already involved military interests. When I threatened to go public, Pierce orchestrated my professional destruction. But there was another reason they needed to silence me, a personal connection that made me dangerous in ways beyond my research. The answers are in your blood, Mia, quite literally. The genetic marker I identified, you carry it. So does Alexander. It's not coincidence. Nothing about our connection to the Ryker family has ever been coincidence. I love you beyond measure. Forgive me for the secrets I kept, trying to protect you." "Mom," Mia looked up, her mind racing. What did she mean? "The answers are in my blood." "What connection to the Ryker family?" Vargas's expression softened fractionally. "Catherine never told you about your biological father." The world seemed to tilt beneath Mia. My father was David Winters. He died when I was 10. David was the man who raised you, who loved you as his own," Vargas corrected gently. "But biologically," she hesitated, then pressed on. "Catherine and Alexander Ryker had a brief relationship during the early P-173 trials. When she discovered she was pregnant, she also discovered the weaponization program. She left Ryker Holdings, reconnected with David, an old friend who agreed to help her disappear. The revelation crashed through Mia's consciousness like a wrecking ball, demolishing the foundations of her identity. Alexander Ryker, the billionaire whose life she had saved, whose company had destroyed her mother, was her biological father. "He knew," she whispered, "at the restaurant. When he saw me, he knew who I was." Vargas nodded. "He's been watching over you from a distance for years, funding scholarships you qualified for, ensuring David's life insurance paid out generously after his accident, even anonymously covering your mother's medical bills when she was first diagnosed with cancer." "Cancer?" Mia looked up sharply. "My mother died of an overdose." That's the official story. But according to Catherine's medical records, the real ones, she was diagnosed with an aggressive form of brain cancer shortly before her death, a glioblastoma with an unusual presentation that appeared almost overnight. The pieces suddenly aligned with horrifying clarity. They gave her cancer, Mia realized, using her own research against her. The binary weapon. It was one of their first field tests, Vargas confirmed grimly. And when she threatened to expose them, They made her a demonstration of her own discovery's potential. Mia's mind raced through the implications. And now they're doing the same to Ryker, to my father. The word felt foreign on her tongue. But why wait 20 years? Why not kill him immediately? Because Alexander Ryker was useful to them, Vargas explained. He built Ryker Holdings into a pharmaceutical empire, legitimized their research, gave them the perfect platform to distribute their weaponized compounds globally. But recently, he's been making moves they don't like, restructuring the company, questioning Lawrence Pierce's authority, investigating old research programs. His diagnosis changed things, Mia surmised, made him reconsider his legacy, and made him dangerous to them, Vargas added. Just like your mother became dangerous when she discovered the truth. History repeating itself. Mia set the letter aside and produced the flash drive. This contains everything: my mother's original research, evidence of the weaponization program, genetic targeting profile. Vargas took it reverently. This is what we've needed. Hard evidence connecting the conspiracy to specific individuals. She inserted the drive into a specialized computer isolated from external networks. With this, we can finally expose the Helix Directive. As Vargas began examining the files, Mia's phone vibrated with an incoming call, an unknown number. With trepidation, she answered. Mia, Dr. Chen's voice was breathless, urgent. Don't trust Vargas. The GIA was compromised 3 years ago. Pierce's people are in the building. Get out now. The call disconnected abruptly. Mia looked up at Vargas, who was studying the screen with intense focus, seemingly unaware of the call's content. Anything interesting? Mia asked, trying to keep her voice casual while she assessed her options. Vargas glanced up. Everything we need to bring them down. This evidence is ironclad. She smiled, but something about the expression didn't reach her eyes. You've done what your mother couldn't. You should be proud. As Vargas turned back to the computer, Mia noticed something she had missed before, a small pin on the journalist's lapel. A stylized double helix. The Helix Directive wasn't just a code name. It was an actual organization with members, insignia, true believers in their cause. And Sofia Vargas was one of them. Mia stood abruptly. I just remembered. There's one file missing. Critical context for the research data. It's in a separate location. Vargas's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. Where? I need to retrieve it personally. Security protocol Dr. Chen established. Of course. Vargas's smile tightened. I'll have someone accompany you. No need, Mia insisted, moving toward the door. And I'll be quick. As her hand touched the handle, Vargas spoke again, her voice transformed, harder, colder. Your mother made the same mistake, you know? Thinking she could walk away. She pressed a button on her desk. No one walks away from the directive. Mia, not even Alexander Ryker's daughter. The door lock engaged with an audible click. Mia stared at the locked door, then back at Vargas, whose demeanor had completely transformed. Gone was the crusading journalist, replaced by something colder, more calculating. 20 years we've been cleaning up Catherine's mess, Vargas said, removing her glasses. And now her daughter brings it all back to the surface. She touched the double helix pin on her lapel. Did you really think we wouldn't infiltrate the very organizations most likely to expose us? Mia's mind raced through options. The frosted glass walls would muffle sound, making shouting for help futile. Vargas stood between her and the computer with the flash drive. Why? Mia asked, playing for time. Why develop a weapon that could kill millions? Not kill, control. Vargas's eyes gleamed with zealous conviction. Imagine a world where violent impulses could be neutralized with a simple trigger compound, where genetic predispositions to antisocial behavior could be regulated pharmaceutically. That's not what you're doing, Mia countered. You're creating targeted bioweapons. We're creating options for a chaotic world, Vargas corrected. Sometimes surgical removal of threats is necessary. Your mother couldn't accept that. Neither could Alexander. In the end, a soft chime from Vargas's computer diverted her attention momentarily. In that split second, Mia lunged for the emergency fire alarm on the wall, smashing the glass with her elbow. Shrieking alarms filled the building. The automatic security systems disengaged all electronic locks, a safety protocol Mia had gambled on based on her hospital training. The door clicked open. Mia bolted, sprinting through the suddenly chaotic office as employees headed for evacuation routes. Behind her, she heard Vargas shouting into a phone, "Intercept her! Lobby and all exits!" Mia bypassed the elevators, heading for the emergency stairs. She was 3 flights down when she heard the door above her slam open, followed by the heavy footfalls of pursuit. At the 10th floor, she exited the stairwell, racing down a deserted corridor. Office buildings like this often had sky bridges connecting to adjacent structures, a common feature in cities with harsh winters. She found what she was looking for at the end of the hall, a glass-enclosed walkway leading to the building next door. As she crossed the bridge, a figure stepped into her path. Lawrence Pierce himself, flanked by 2 security personnel. "Miss Winters," he said, his voice betraying no exertion despite having clearly rushed to intercept her. "This has gone far enough." Mia backed away, but the sound of footsteps behind her confirmed Vargas's people had caught up. She was trapped on the glass bridge, suspended 15 stories above the street. Catherine's daughter, indeed, Pierce observed with cold admiration. Same brilliance, same defiance, same inability to recognize when you're outmatched. "You murdered my mother," Mia said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "You're killing Ryker. How many others?" "Only those who forced our hand." Pierce stepped closer. "We offered Catherine a place in our vision. She chose martyrdom instead, a waste of extraordinary talent. And what's your offer to me? Join or die?" Pierce smiled thinly. "And do you have your mother's research instincts and your father's business acumen? A remarkable combination. The directive could benefit from such genetics." "You weaponized medicine to control population genetics," Mia said with disgust. "You're not visionaries. You're eugenicists with better marketing." Pierce's smile vanished. "Idealism is a luxury of the young and naive. Your mother learned that lesson too late." He held out his hand. "At the flash drive, Mr. Winters, it's over." A calm certainty settled over Mia. They would kill her regardless of whether she surrendered the evidence. Her only hope, the world's only hope, was to ensure the truth survived. She reached into her pocket, removing what appeared to be the flash drive. "Looking for this," a new voice called from behind Pierce. Eleanor Chen stood at the opposite end of the sky bridge, holding up an identical drive. Behind her was Agent Donovan and a team of agents with weapons drawn. "Federal agents, hands where we can see them," Donovan shouted. Pierce's security reached for their weapons, but Donovan's warning was clear. Any weapon appears, and this bridge becomes a shooting gallery. Nobody wins. Pierce remained unnaturally calm. "Agent Donovan, I presume you have a warrant?" "Several," Donovan replied coldly, "including one for the murder of Catherine Winters and the attempted murder of Alexander Ryker." As Pierce's attention was diverted, Mia noticed movement at the far end of the bridge. Sofia Vargas had arrived with her own security team, creating a 3-way standoff. "The evidence has already been distributed to multiple secure locations," Dr. Chen announced. "The copies sent to regulatory agencies worldwide, major news outlets, and international courts. It's over, Lawrence." Pierce's composed facade cracked slightly. "You're bluffing. You haven't had time." "We've had 20 years, a familiar voice responded. Alexander Ryker emerged from behind Dr. Chen's group, looking frail but determined. He walked onto the bridge with the aid of a cane, his eyes fixed on Pierce. "Hello, Lawrence. This feels familiar, doesn't it? You, me, and a Winters woman uncovering your crimes." Pierce's expression hardened. "Alexander, still clinging to life despite our best efforts. Spite is a powerful motivator," Ryker replied with a grim smile. He looked at Mia, his eyes softening. "You have her courage. I should have had half as much 20 years ago." The revelation of their biological connection hung unspoken between them. "And it was never just about the research, was it?" Mia realized, addressing Pierce. "It was about bloodlines, about genetic potential. You've been tracking Ryker's genetic line, my genetic line, from the beginning. The markers your mother identified." Pierce confirmed, his scientific curiosity momentarily overriding his caution. Your family carries a rare neurological profile, enhanced cognitive processing, unique receptor configurations. Catherine discovered it while researching herself and Alexander. She realized the binary weapon could be calibrated to target specific genetic signatures or enhance them. So you murdered her to control the research, Mia said, the final pieces falling into place, then slowly poisoned Ryker when he started asking questions about the past. About me, a simplification, but essentially correct, Pierce admitted. Though I prefer to think of it as protecting humanity's future. Certain genetic lines must be preserved, others managed. Enough, Donovan interrupted. Lawrence Pierce, you're under arrest for conspiracy, murder, and crimes against humanity. As agents moved to apprehend Pierce, Vargas gave a signal to her security team. In an instant, the standoff erupted into chaos. Gunfire shattered the glass walls of the bridge. Mia dropped to the floor as bullets flew overhead. A strong hand gripped her arm. Ryker, pulling her behind a structural beam for cover. Stay down, he ordered, his voice strained but authoritative. Through the chaos, Mia saw Pierce attempting to escape in the confusion. Without thinking, she lunged forward, tackling him to the ground. They struggled briefly before Pierce produced a small syringe from his jacket. Like mother, like daughter, he snarled, aiming for her neck. A shot rang out. Pierce's body jerked, the syringe clattering to the floor unfired. Behind him stood Dr. Chen, her borrowed service weapon still raised. For Catherine, she said simply. In the aftermath, as federal agents secured the scene and medical personnel attended to the wounded, Mia found herself sitting beside Ryker on a bench outside the building, a shock blanket draped over her shoulders. I would have told you, he said quietly, when the time was right. When is the right time to tell someone you're their biological father? Mia asked, her voice hollow with exhaustion. After their mother is murdered. After 20 years of silence, I made a promise to Catherine, Ryker replied, to stay away, to let David raise you without complication, to protect you from the directive. He looked at his trembling hands. I failed her in life. I was determined not to fail her in death. Mia was silent for a long moment. Did you love her? With everything I had, Ryker answered without hesitation. But love wasn't enough against what we were facing. She was brave enough to stand against them. I wasn't. His eyes, so like her own, met hers. Until I saw you in that restaurant, until you saved my life with the very knowledge your mother died protecting. The irony wasn't lost on Mia. How a simple waitressing shift had cascaded into the exposure of a decades-long conspiracy, the revelation of her true parentage and the vindication of her mother's legacy. Dr. Chen approached, looking exhausted but triumphant. It's done. The evidence has been secured. Vargas is in custody. The directive's leadership is being rounded up worldwide. And the medications? Mia asked. Neuroxal, Zelvatrax. Emergency recalls have been initiated, Chen confirmed. Research teams are already working on counteragents for those already exposed. Ryker nodded, satisfaction briefly overcoming his weariness. Catherine's final victory. As dawn broke over the city, illuminating the three figures who had finally completed Catherine Winter's mission, Mia realized the journey that had begun with a simple observation in a restaurant, a waitress recognizing a billionaire's symptoms, had transformed into something her mother had fought and died for, truth. And though the road ahead would be complex, untangling the directive's global web, addressing Ryker's deteriorating health, processing her own shifted identity, Mia knew with certainty that her mother would be proud of the family legacy she had reclaimed. Not wealth or pharmaceutical empires, but the courage to recognize what was right and the determination to protect it at all costs. Catherine's daughter indeed.